Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter from Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast, part of the Fans First Sports Network. Joined by my good buddy, Johnny Shop, this week, as again, we go around the NFL. John, we got some Raiders stuff to get into, and then we're going to really get into a conversation I'm excited to have with you about the pretenders over the contenders. And let's get right in it. The supplemental draft is back. There isn't always a ton of guys that go in the supplemental draft. I remember a couple of years ago, Quentin Jammer. And let's credit my buddy Vic Taffer and The Athletic for putting this out there. And but the supplemental draft is back, first time since 2019. Normally, this is a draft that's reserved for guys that are ruled ineligible in college for the next year. But the draft is already over. You and I have been talking all morning about the fact I think it also has a lot to do with these guys who aren't drafted or who maybe left school early and went and played in some of these spring leagues. I think it could be big for them. Do you really think this is a big deal? You don't see a lot of big time guys go in this draft. I know Terrell Pryor did, but I wouldn't consider him a big time player. What are your thoughts, John?
Well, it's a little bit of a surprise to see it coming back. It's been gone since 2019, and I think when it went away, it was assumed it was pretty much gone for good. So professional football has changed a good bit. You've got two spring leagues that appear to have some significant talent that teams will at least want to bring into camp. So when I look at this initially, it looks to me like another decision the NFL's made in the best competitive interest of the sport, rather than one or two teams overpaying to get all the players that they want from these leagues, or if there is a player that'd be eligible for the supplemental draft that they would otherwise just go grab. This is going to give chance for each team. In a way, they may be set up to essentially bid to make these draft picks. And it looks like it's going to be something to help assure the competitive balance. Now, nobody is expecting a starter to come out of these spring leagues quite yet, although I am long on the spring leagues producing skill players like kickers, long snappers, punters. So maybe there's a little more here than we think, but it's a little bit of a surprise. The NFL sees enough reason to bring the supplemental draft back in sometime, it looks like in the middle of July. So for a lot of guys who maybe don't have invites to camp yet or weren't quite sure where they're going to go, this could actually be a pretty exciting time.
I agree. You know, John, for people that don't know, the supplemental draft is divided into three groups. First of all, teams with 6 or less wins, then teams with more than 6 that didn't make the playoffs, and then the playoff teams. So if a player's up, it's not like the regular draft where you can select. You put a bid in. So let's say the Raiders liked the guy and said, okay, we're willing to give a 3rd round pick for him. They send in an envelope. Everybody gets in the envelope. The NFL opens them and says, okay, listen, the Raiders were in that first group, 6 or less wins. And of everybody in that group, they offered a 3rd, but another team offered a 2nd. Or maybe another team offered a 3rd, but they had a worse record than the Raiders, then the Raiders would get that guy. And that's just kind of, so everyone would know, that's kind of how the whole system works. Pretty interesting, isn't it?
It is. And when you think about your football team, you think about the Raiders, you've got to take a needs-based approach. So first of all, who is eligible for the supplemental draft? What are the players that are eligible? Second of all, what might they be worth, which is a bit of a wild card, but assuming you have college and maybe some professional football or camp tape to go off of, you may have a better idea. And then it is kind of interesting because it's a little bit different. You know, this is not just a straight pick 'em. I liked a lot of some of what I saw in the spring leagues. I thought some kickers did well, and you can, call some bias because a former Michigan State kicker did pretty well. And there were some guys that probably elevated themselves off the map from any NFL consideration to potentially being worth a, 4th, 3rd, 5th, 6th round pick. So since this is pretty much breaking news here this week, and we'll probably learn more as we go along, I would assume if nothing else, it gives these NFL teams another round of personnel work to do before July 4th, because there's probably going to be a team or two that's interested in snagging a guy. And there's others that are probably just going to let some dust settle, and then do what they normally do during training camp, where the guy's not anywhere and all of a sudden he's in on Tuesday morning, or as we've seen in the past, those sometimes a few guys trying out for a camp slot.
Now, in case anybody's wondering, this is going to publish a few days from when we're taping it. So when you said it's just breaking, it is just breaking when we taped it, just not when it's published. John, we're going to get into pretenders in a minute, but before we do, I want to ask you this question because I think it's very vital. I think the NFL is superior to every league in all of the world of professional sports for one reason: parity. Nearly every team starts the season knowing at least there is a chance. I mean, we're already at the time of this taping, and it will publish in June. But there are a ton of baseball teams that already know we're out of it. When the NBA starts, probably after the first week, there's a ton of teams are out of it. You see the same thing, in hockey. You see it in other sports. Later in a minute, we're going to get into the pretenders this year, the teams that don't have a chance. But I think that's part of what makes the National Football League great, is everybody knows, at least there's a chance. Your thoughts on that?
As it's evolved, the NFL has had such a long-term vision to competition. Some folks call it socialized competition, to try to give everybody as much of a chance. And for some of us, we saw some dynasties in decades past. Over time, it's really kind of tightened up. Right now, I don't think there's an NFL franchise that you can look at and say there's no chance they could compete within about 3 years. That has really tightened up. The old window has shrunk, but the windows appear to be opening up quicker and quicker. A lot of teams are not more than a couple players away from at least having a chance to compete, or a couple of bad breaks for other teams in their division or conference from having a chance. So it really is the secret. It really is the absolute secret sauce of the NFL, because, and to their credit, they make commercials about it every year. We see them at the start of the year, and then we see them at the end of the year, where they have fans like, hey, this could be our year. And that, teams won 2 or 3 games. It is what makes the NFL the most popular form of entertainment in the country. If it was very tilted and dominated by just a few teams, there's no way it would be as popular. As great as the game is to watch, there's no way it would be as popular, because NFL fans more and more are interested in winning than having a good time watching it. If you have that desire to win and you're not set up for everybody to have a relatively even chance to compete, it's going to blow up. We may see that at other sports. You may see that at the college football level sooner than later. We're not going to see that at the NFL level. While we can agree there's probably continuous improvement that needs to be made, and maybe some rules changes to stop favoring the passing game quite as much, or a couple of other things, the overall long-term vision for the sport is really kind of unfolded in such a way that nearly every team has a chance to look at the playoffs, and nearly every team feels like they may be only a year or 2 away from right there, knocking on the door.
Excuse me. So, John, we now head into our pretenders. And I think, in my opinion, I can tell you right now, I got 5, 6, 7, 8. I got 9 teams that don't have a chance. Okay. Now, a couple of them, you could make an argument, but I think there are 9 teams that come in knowing we don't have a chance. I have the Carolina Panthers here. What do you think of that?
I think the Carolina Panthers are interesting to watch. They have a nice stadium that has been upgraded. It's in great shape. They have basically a high school football practice facility that's on the other side of the stadium. I've seen it. I've parked next to it. It's like, this is it. They've got a long-term issue with building a practice facility, and they've got a wild card of a new owner that appears to still be figuring it out as he goes. David Tepper is an incredibly successful financial mind. He's an interesting guy. For those that watched a season with the Carolina Panthers his first year, he's an interesting guy to watch. But I'm not sure the way he handled the head coaching situation there was terrific. And I wonder what happens if this year doesn't quite go that way. So I feel like the Panthers are a little unstable. Bryce Young comes in there. He's a little small. We'll see if that's an issue or not. Some people think it's a big issue. Some people think it's going to be no issue. But I would agree that they have absolutely no chance, not 1 ounce of chance, to threaten for any kind of Super Bowl contention.
All right. My 25th best team in the NFL, no chance, Atlanta Falcons.
I live in Atlanta, and I think what happened is really incredible. The Falcons had a chance to tank for Trevor, if you will, but a stubborn Matt Ryan, to his professional credit, and others wanted to continue to try to win games. I don't know what those 2 or 3 games they won were worth. So out goes Trevor Lawrence, who has a giant mural in Cartersville, Georgia, on the side of a big building where he's from, which is just outside of Metro Atlanta. It's basically the Atlanta area. Somehow Justin Fields falls in their lap, and they pass on him to take a tight end, because as we all know, a lot of Super Bowl contenders are built straight through the tight end position, right? So as someone that lives in Atlanta, I took that as nearly a complete, I mean, it's hard to take it any other way than a pretty big insult to a fan base. So I took my season ticket order and put it in my pocket. And now we see what we see. Arthur Smith is an interesting guy. I'm sure he's doing the best he can, but I don't know what the upside is for the Falcons. The quarterback continues to be the most important position in the sport. Do they have anybody on their roster that could possibly lead you to a playoffs or a championship? I don't know. Playing Marcus Mariota in 2022 is an interesting idea. It's a credit to Marcus Mariota. It's not a credit to the Falcons. I think the Falcons have big problems. I think their stadium is going to continue to be half empty. I think they alienated a lot more of the fan base than they've yet to appreciate by not being in position to take Trevor Lawrence or not taking Justin Fields, 2 Atlanta guys that happen to be pretty good quarterbacks. And as a result, I don't know what the future of their team is. They came very close. They had a really long run with Matt Ryan. They had 2 really good looks at a Super Bowl. We all know what happened in the one that they played in and they lost, but I don't think they have any chance to do anything this year. I don't think they're going to even have a look at a playoff spot.
The 26th best team is the Indianapolis Colts. Again, pretender, no contender.
That's a house of cards that fell. You know, a couple of years ago, they looked like they were going to be making a potential run to the Super Bowl. They had a terrific running back. They had a lot of other guys in place. And unfortunately, they went with Carson Wentz, and Carson Wentz completely wilted when it was needed most. That's a franchise that still has not gotten over the faceplant that they took down in Jacksonville in the final game of the year a couple years back. Now they're looking at going with a total rookie quarterback. That can be fun. It can also be a little bit of a mistake-prone situation. But to my point earlier, this is a franchise that looks and thinks we may be 2 or 3 years away from right there knocking on the door again. It's not going to happen this year. The Colts are not going to be good. I agree.
Next, I have the LA Rams at 27. They went all in. They won a Super Bowl. To me, if I'm a fan, I don't care that they're this slow. You got me a Super Bowl, Rams.
I'm not sure why so many people are so sour on the Rams. I think they are looking at motivation and fast aging. I don't think Matt Stafford had a lot left in the tank to begin with. I don't think he's got a lot left in the tank now. At some point, your body doesn't recover after being knocked around so much. I thought the Rams were riddled with some injury and fatigue and maybe a lack of motivation last year. I'm not as down on the Rams as everybody else is. So I would not say that they have absolutely no chance of making a Super Bowl, but I don't know exactly how they would do it at this point. But I'm not writing them off completely yet.
Next, I've got the Chicago Bears. I got the Chicago Bears at 28. No chance. I'm a big Fields guy. I like Fields. They've not put a lot around them, but I got them at 28.
So this is one of those teams that, are they 2 years away, 3 years away? We don't know, but I'm actually excited to see what they do this year. Fields, I think, probably did a pretty good job of taking what the game presented him last year. Does that mean he ran a whole lot? Yes. Does that mean he ran too much? I don't know. I don't necessarily think so. But what's going to evolve this year in Chicago is going to be interesting to see. It's a franchise getting ready for some pretty big changes. What's going to happen to their stadium? They've got some new front office leadership coming in. They've got some new pieces to put this puzzle together around Justin Fields. I would write them off as having no chance for a Super Bowl, but I'm not sure that they will be totally out of playoff contention. I got other teams lower. I got a couple other teams lower than them.
All right, I do too. Number 29, I have the Washington Commanders. It's just a complete joke of a franchise. Everything rises and falls on leadership. The time of this taping, Dan Snyder's still the owner. It's a complete farce. I got the Commanders at 29.
Well, they've got defensive linemen, and they maybe have too many. What's going to happen with Chase Young? We're not sure. I think that the franchise is so remarkably fortunate to have Ron Rivera as a head coach. I have no idea why he took that job. I don't know if he just didn't want to move out of the Mid-Atlantic because Charlotte and DC aren't far. I don't know. But much better days are ahead for the franchise. We're hoping for RFK2, a new complex. We're hoping for the Red Tails to be their team name once this patent troll issue is resolved. We're hoping for really good things in the DMV for the restoration of a once proud franchise. But this year, I don't think that happens. I don't know who decided to go with Carson Wentz, but that set this team back, I think, without much question. And why there's some upset around the Chase Young situation right now, I'm not sure it's the end of the world. I think they want a chance for him to prove his health. And if he proves his health and is really successful, then the franchise can decide, how do we sign this guy or what do we trade him for? Because they've got Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, and other pieces in place. So I'm with you. I don't see a possible Super Bowl contention at this time, although I'm not sure they are completely out of playoff contention. I like that speedy wide receiver they picked up from Penn State. I think Dotson. You like a couple of their pieces, but the ownership issue and the Carson Wentz issue, I think it sets them back.
30, I got the Houston Texans. No chance. I like their new coach, but the franchise just not in a spot.
I don't know why you take that job unless you really want it or you have no other choice. The idea that Lovie Smith gets fired from the University of Illinois and ends up in the Houston Texans is kind of out of this world. Just as the idea of DeMeco Ryans taking this job, although he's got history in Houston. I think the Texans had a window a while back, and that window's gone. It seems like they're literally starting from scratch. But I'm really curious why Ryans took that head coaching job, because the old axiom of, don't take a job, really don't take a head coaching job that's really no good. The Texans kind of look a lot like that. So we're starting completely fresh. The Etch-a-Sketch has been cleared out. Of course, they've got a new quarterback. Yeah, they have absolutely no chance to make the playoffs. None.
31, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Hey, you sold your soul for the Super Bowl. You got it. No complaints from the pirate ship.
Yeah, it seems to me like there's no complaints at all. Not only did they get one, obviously they were like a play or two away from playing for another one.
Another one.
Yeah, I don't think there's any worry there, but you've got some age factor there. You've got some recycled talent. I don't know that can play winning quarterback at the NFL level because of size, at least size, and because of I just don't know that you can play that style and be dependable and reliable and play all the games on the calendar. So nobody looks ahead in the NFL, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are likely to be looking ahead very early next year. I don't think they have a shot. This is really hard to imagine a team that's played for so much. The pieces that were there, how motivated are they going to be to grind through mid-October as they're probably at the bottom of their division or right there with the Falcons?
Lastly, Arizona Cardinals are the worst team. They're not hiding it. It's tank for Caleb, and no chance whatsoever of the Arizona Cardinals.
None. Yeah, they had a window. That window's long gone. They need a new owner, or they appear to be going backwards fast. And their most interesting story of the year may be the off-field litigation from their former offensive line coach.
Isn't that ridiculous?
It is. It's going to be interesting, though. I am sure that the Cardinals, the NFL, don't want a lot of it to be public, but we're dealing with strange stuff here because this is it's an international incident, if you will. So this is a new one. This is going down a wild road. But when you saw the Cardinals, look, I mean, I love Mighty Mouse. He's fun to watch. But how many times can Kyler Murray run around and do his thing before the product is too damaged? And it feels like he's now an injury or two away from being probably knocked out of being a successful starting NFL quarterback anywhere.
Agree with you. All right. He's a great Johnny Shop. I'm Hondo Carpenter from Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast, part of the Fans First Sports Network. John also has a podcast there called the Spartan Pride Podcast. So from both of us, we'll see you next time on the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast.